Welcome back to another episode of Talking to Unicorns. It's been a while, but we're back. And today I am talking to a graphic designer from Hamilton. Sophie, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No worries. So can you just start off by telling us a bit about who you are, what it is that you do, and how you ended up on the Unicorn Factory?
Sure thing. So my name is Sophie. I'm 27. I'm currently living in Hamilton, but I'm actually an Auckland girl. Was born and raised in Auckland, born in Wellington. And I am a graphic designer. So a bit about me, I guess my background is I knew that I really enjoyed graphic design from high school because I just loved the subject design at high school. And so decided that I wanted to do that at uni. And so I went to Victoria Uni and did a sort of more of a broad design degree there. And then after that, just kicked into it and got my first design in-house job at a marketing research company in Auckland. And I was there for, 3 to 4 years actually. And then I'm kind of just going through the whole history of my career right now. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to go overseas and do my OE. But unfortunately that coincided with COVID. And so I went over to the UK and did a pivot, came home and then didn't have a job, needed a job. And that's when I started to seriously think about freelancing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So when you got back, was the first thing that you tried to do to find jobs, or was kind of the whole idea of potentially freelancing on the horizon before that?
I think it's always something that I've been interested in, but I never really had the push to do it. Mm-hmm. But then when I came back and then I didn't have a job, that was really kind of what got me thinking that I should actually just give it a crack. So mm-hmm. I was still looking for work, like full-time work at the same time. But I was like, in the meantime, I want to be doing something. I want to be utilizing my time and my skill set. So I will try and do some freelance. And so I ended up getting a client who were living in the UK, and I was obviously back in New Zealand, and did some branding for them. But then I was still looking for full-time work at the same time. So whilst I kind of had this idea of freelancing is awesome and I do have a client and that's great, it still wasn't really enough for security. So I got another full-time job, which was what I did for the second half of last year. And that was just really an interim job. It was a maternity leave contract as an in-house graphic designer for a manufacturing company in Hamilton. And that is why I relocated to Hamilton.
Nice. So are you still doing that at the moment, or have you now fully jumped into the freelancing world?
So now I fully jumped into the freelancing world. Yeah. So I was doing that and I was doing that full time, and I was working with that one client in the UK as well. And then I finished that interim job at the end of last year. And now I am full-time freelance as of January this year.
Okay, so what was it that made you decide to go? What happened throughout the second half of last year that made you go, okay, now I'm going to go freelancing? Did you find more clients, or what was the main thing that pushed you down that path?
To be honest, I was kind of looking at other freelancers and what they were doing. And I kind of just had this sudden drive to do my own thing and kind of work for myself. I mean, I don't know. I just kind of thought this is the time. And I knew this job, that full-time job, was coming to an end. And so I needed to get another job or to commit to the freelance. And I was like, I think I'm going to try and commit to the freelance. I just felt like it was the right time, and I feel like it was the right decision. I'm feeling really happy with everything so far. So
what is your strategy then when you are like, okay, I am going to start freelancing full time? Where do you start? you know, like if you have like, say, one client, you have a full-time job and you then say to yourself, I want to go freelancing full-time. What is like the journey that you go through in the first few weeks?
Well, I knew that I wanted to go freelance probably like full time, probably in November, and the job finished, just before Christmas. So I had a little bit of time up my sleeve, and basically I just started out by just talking to everyone that I knew, to try and get the word out there that I was going to be doing freelance full time. Did anyone have any work? Did anyone know anyone that needed a graphic designer? So I was talking to, family, friends, anyone really, any sort of connection that I had to try and get the word out there so that I wasn't starting from scratch when I was, full time, and I was just sitting there and being like, oh shit, I haven't done anything prior to this point.
Yeah.
So as a result of doing that, I already had a few kind of promising conversations at the end of last year before I became full-time, which indicated to me that in January there would actually probably be some work for me. So that was really nice going into January. I was like, okay, I've had some conversations. A few businesses are interested in doing some work with me in January or February. So I have somewhere to start, basically.
Fantastic. And so what specifically were you telling businesses that you could do for them besides just graphic design work?
So because I worked at that marketing research company for 3 to 4 years, I think it's about 3.5 years, my experience is really in presentation design, creating proposals, presentations, infographics, reports, and doing kind of data visualization. That's where my kind of experience is and my interest lies. And so that is kind of what I mainly pitch when I try to get work. Is I say to businesses, are you looking for any sort of data visualization? Any sort of, basically any business that needs nicely designed presentations or proposals or works with data that needs to be communicated visually in a really appealing and punchy way. That's my ideal client, basically.
Okay, so when you were having those conversations with those first few clients, what kind of things were they needing? Was it like end of year reports, or what kind of stuff specifically did they need your help with?
I think it's kind of actually at the moment. So I'm kind of jumping forward, but I'm kind of doing ongoing work with a few different businesses, and that's kind of how it's ended up. And that's where I am at the moment. Basically, it's kind of ongoing work in various different forms of those things that I just described. So the presentations to clients that include data that needs to be visualized in certain ways. End of year reports, exactly, like big chunky projects like that, document kind of formatting. So I mean, all of that sort of stuff, really. There wasn't any like one particular project that I kind of discussed with the companies. They kind of more said, I like what you do, and I think that what you do could be helpful for our business in an ongoing capacity, more than like a one-off project.
And so did you, prior to freelancing, have like your own portfolio that you could use to show clients the type of work that you were doing?
Yeah, I did. So it was a bit tricky because of the confidentiality kind of aspect to market research. I couldn't really like show all of the work that I'd done at the company that I worked for on my portfolio. So I kind of had to recreate quite a bit of it, using kind of dummy data and that sort of stuff. But I do have a website which has kind of some of my work on it. Some of my key work, I guess. And that's what I've been showing people and kind of directing them back to that website, which is a super simple Squarespace website, because I'm not a web designer. So it's definitely not where my skill set lies. But I do think that it's been really helpful because it just draws people back to a place that they can just see who I am, what I do, some of my key pieces of work, and just get a quick feel for what I'm about and whether they are kind of interested in what I do or not, I guess.
Fantastic. And so do you have a particular type of client that you prefer working with?
I open to any sort of client really that needs the sort of work that I do. But I think that my sort of experience lends itself to companies that are a little bit more established and have quite a lot of work that needs to be nicely formatted, and they don't have the time to do it themselves, or the skill set. So I mean, I'm working for a couple of companies at the moment that are pretty big, which is really nice. And I'm kind of doing some work with a few other designers within those companies as well, as opposed to being the only designer. But then in saying that, I worked the client that was in the UK last year. I created a brand identity for they were doing a startup website and app. So in saying that, I will work with whoever really, so long as they've got good vibes, they're good people, and they like what I'm about, and then I'm keen for it.
Nice. So I want to dig a bit deeper into the whole data visualization and infographic stuff, because I think that is very unique and very interesting. So so what does the process look like when you start working with a client? Because I assume it would be pretty hard to kind of come up with like a templated way of presenting data when everyone's data is different. So what is that process that you go through with them to get them to the point where they're trying to get to?
Yeah, that's very true. It is very kind of custom. And I think that the process is very sort of organic and differs from client to client. But it just starts out like, I suppose, any sort of project where you have a brief and I get a feel for what they're trying to achieve. And then it's about kind of seeing what form the data is in at that starting point. So some clients will have an Excel spreadsheet and then draw on a piece of paper what they're kind of envisioning, and then want your input from that point. Some clients have nothing and they literally just have things written down on a piece of paper or Excel spreadsheet or Word document, or they don't even have the data yet, and they're just wanting to kickstart the process, but they obviously know what the data might look like, I guess. So it really differs. So yeah, I guess I have that brief and then talk through what they're after, come up with some ideas, and then deliver it back to them and see if I'm on the right track, basically. It's quite an iterative process, I guess, as with any sort of design. But I think so long as you're keeping in communication with the client and getting a feel for what they want, but then recognizing that they may not entirely know what they want until they see it, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's all part of the process. So so it's super fun though, because it can start off with a piece of paper with a scribble on it, and they're like, so I'm wanting to achieve this, but this is what I have. And you're like, right, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to create this visual graph out of it that demonstrates XYZ, and it can be pretty fun. So I like it.
Nice. And so now I want to have a bit of a chat about just being a freelancer, because you're really, since January, about a month and a half into it. What's been the most fun part about being a freelancer?
I'm just loving the flexibility of kind of where I work, when I work. That sort of stuff is really cool. Mm-hmm. I mean, that has its downsides too, because I am quite a social person. So being by myself most of the time, sometimes I get a little bit stir crazy, but I am enjoying it as well. And I have a co-shared working space that I go to in Cambridge, which is really fun. So I can see other people doing freelance and hang out with them. I'm really just enjoying the flexibility of it, and kind of running my own show is very cool. There's a lot of freedom to it that I kind of wasn't anticipating that it would feel as fun as it has. So so far so good. We're still early days though.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was fantastic is like the branding that you had for your website. So, like, tell me a bit about the process that you went through to set that up, because that is something that you usually don't see a lot of freelancers who are just getting started do until a lot later. But when I checked out your website, it was fantastic. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there, I guess like, so I suppose I did that when I came back from the UK, and I had that period where I was like, I need to do something. That's kind of when I did that. I created the website. I got all of my work on there and got a bit of a look and feel for kind of my personal brand, I guess. I'd love to do some more to it. Like, I mean, perfectionist graphic designer, but I have all these like visions and then just run out of time. But yeah, for now, like, I think it just needs to kind of demonstrate me and the kind of aesthetic that I design, I guess. I'm clean, I'm can be girly, professional. That's kind of a bit of me. So yeah.
Nice. Cool. So one thing that I always talk about in these videos is kind of like tips and tricks for people who are thinking about becoming freelancers. And so I think one thing that always comes up is like the concerns of it being a bit like too difficult or to run a business. How have you found the first few months of running a business? And are there any particular challenges that you've had that you've been, dealing with like since starting freelancing?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it for sure. Like, I think there's a lot of kind of time, like business admin time, I think, that you kind of don't think about before you're kind of in it. You're like, yeah, and I'm going to do all this chargeable work and it's going to be awesome and I'm going to make heaps of money. And then you're like, oh, like I need to set up my accounting software. I need to invoice. I need to do all of that sort of stuff. Even quoting, like, you're not obviously not charging for that. So, so I mean, it does take up quite a bit of time, but I reckon scheduling out your days is what I do, and it's really helpful. So I allow a certain amount of hours a week for chargeable work. And I'm fortunate that because I've got ongoing work with a couple of different businesses that I was saying, I am able to do that because, I mean, it is still early days. So I'm feeling very, very fortunate that I'm kind of at the place, I guess, that I'm at. But yeah, so I have a certain amount of hours that I schedule in each week as that chargeable time. And then around that, I add in the business admin time. I add in, anything else that I need to do, any personal shit. Yep. But basically just having that baseline of the certain amount of, I've lost you, there you are. The certain amount of chargeable hours has been really helpful for me because it means that I can financially plan, and I'm kind of providing a bit of financial security for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's been super helpful. So that's probably something that I would highly recommend rather than just kind of winging it, which, I mean, has its plus sides, but I think as much as you can, just plan ahead. Yeah.
And how have you, so now that you've got a few clients, are you still actively looking out for like researching clients, or tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I definitely am, and Unicorn Factory is great for that. Is one channel that is excellent for that, and there's a few kind of other groups and whatnot that I'm a part of. But yeah, definitely still open to and looking for clients. It's probably not like as critical as it kind of was when I first started, because I do have that ongoing work. But in saying that, you never know what's going to happen or when a business is going to need you or not need you. And I've absolutely still got room in my schedule for, new clients and new work, and also just for my own interest's sake. And, I love working with different clients and getting different projects. And so definitely looking for new work, but probably not like hardcore hunting, every day type thing. It's more just trying to put myself out there so that if someone wants to find me, they can.
Yep.
yeah, and then trying to focus on that chargeable existing work that I have. And I suppose just continuing to utilize my networks as well. That's been really helpful. Like, I can't say that enough. Like, friends, family and stuff, like, awesome.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, that is one of the things that I feel is completely underrated, is just tapping into like your existing networks already. Has being in the co-working space helped at all in terms of like networking and, you know, potentially finding clients?
I haven't had any leads or anything so far, but I have, you know, exchanged some business cards, stuff like that, and just being around people, like different creatives that do slightly different things, is really fun. And you never know, you know, when that's going to come in handy, for sure. So nothing yet, but still absolutely early days. Like, still just a baby freelancer.
Nice. Well, it's really interesting. There were so many people who got pushed into freelancing as COVID happened. I think like the amount of freelancers that signed up to the Unicorn Factory in like April and May, it was wild. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how people are doing it. But yeah, I mean, other than that, do you have any tips or tricks that you'd like to pass on to any aspiring freelancers or graphic designers?
Oh, do I? I do. One thing that I will say is probably just always be willing to continue to upskill. So even though, you know, you have an awesome skill set already, I'm sure, in the current programs, like, I'm always looking at, like, I'm part of Skillshare, the platform, and I'm always looking at YouTube videos and stuff and looking at what other people are doing so that you can, I don't know, expand your skill set. I think that that's really important, and just also keeps the inspiration alive for yourself.
Nice. And is the stuff that you're researching specific to being a graphic designer, or is that specific to like running a freelance business?
To be honest, it's both. I've actually been super interested recently in, running a freelance business, and I've been reading kind of books about it and articles and all sorts, which has been really cool. It's kind of like, I mean, obviously it's my new reality, so I'm super interested in it. Yeah.
Nice. And are there like any particular resources that you could recommend, or YouTube channels and all that type of stuff? Because that's how I learned as well. I learned all the tricks through YouTube.
Oh yeah? Oh, cool. Yeah, there's so much stuff out there. And it's like, obviously it's a free resource as well. So cool.
Yeah.
There's not a particular kind of channel that I religiously watch or anything. I'm just kind of always keeping an eye out. Anything that looks sort of vaguely interesting, I'll have a look or save it for later, or yeah.
Nice. Well, fantastic. Well, hey, Sophie, thank you so much for your time to have a chat with me. And I'm going to be sharing all the links to your website, to the Unicorn Factory profile, all that type of stuff in this video. Other than that, friends, thank you for stopping by and watching this video. And I'll see you back here for the next episode, which will probably be this year. So, goodbye.
Woo!
All right.